Welcome to the latest Seahawks Trap Log live stream, instant reaction live stream. It is a solo mission tonight, just me, no Robbie, no Adam. So send your super chats in, and that will help get us through this, as there's a lot to talk about, and it's just me. So send your super chats in. I'll put them up on the screen if you've got thoughts on that game. That was, I'm going to let you into a little secret. I did not enjoy that second half, but thankfully they found a way just about in the end to win. At halftime, the score was 14-3 to the Seahawks. It became 17-3. And then the Cardinals went on a 17-point tear. And it's both. I suspect it probably feels almost a little bit like a loss to some people. It won't feel that way tomorrow. When you actually sort of get through this and think about it, you know, they've won a road game. They've got to 3-1. It's a big win in the NFC West, and there are some positives. And the biggest positive of them all was the quarterback, Sam Darnold, who was fantastic. You know, if there was one sort of big thing you wanted from the first 4 games, I think it was a big performance like that from Sam Darnold, who put the team on his back when they needed him. He made some big time throws to win that game. Some big time throws. It's very hard. I can't think of a serious mistake that he made. There was a couple of sacks. I don't know if you can't see on the TV copy whether he needs to get the ball out quicker. For all we know, the coverage was good, and it was a bit of a coverage sack going on there. He made big throws downfield. He made big third downs. The fact that they even had a chance to kick the one that was missed by Myers, which would have won the game at that point, is because of his throw to Jackson Smith-Njigba. The throw that sets up the field goal is another big completion to Jackson Smith-Njigba, perfectly thrown, back shoulder throw by Sam Darnold. That was absolutely fantastic from the quarterback. And I think Jackson Smith-Njigba deserves a lot of credit as well, because it was pretty clear that the Cardinals had decided they were going to try and limit the damage there. They were not going to let him just do what he's done for the last 3 weeks and be, you know, Seattle's best player and stuff like that. They weren't going to let that happen. And they did a very good job doing that through 3 and a bit quarters. And then when the game actually was on the line, he made the plays. You know, there's no win without Darnold and Jackson Smith-Njigba. So that's the big positive. And if they'd have just won that game easily, if it had finished, you know, 20 points to 6 or whatever, then you wouldn't have had that moment. You could have come out of it and said, "Yep, Sam Darnold play well, but the Cardinals aren't very good," and that's that, and you move on. But the fact that you know, a lot of other players contributed to making that closer than it needed to be, that gave Sam Darnold his opportunity to shine. So I think that's the big positive for me. It's Sam Darnold playing brilliantly, putting the team on his back. Jackson Smith-Njigba showing that he, you know, in a game where the opponent is determined to take him away, he still found a way to make a big impact and help you win the game. So those are the big positives. I suppose the other one is that they had a number of sacks in the game. I think when you're playing Kyler Murray, there's always a good chance that you're going to get a number of sacks. What did they have in the end? 6 sacks in the end. And they were very aggressive with their blitz in Seattle. So they're the positives for me. I'm not going to just sort of linger on the negatives, because they did win the game. And I think it is important that, you know, I think a lot of people are going to want to talk about how they nearly lost this game rather than how they won it. And let's be fair, if it wasn't for that botched kickoff, you know, the new rules, you have to kick it into the zone. Is it like the 20-yard line? It has to bounce in. And because it bounced on the 21-yard line, Seattle gets the ball at the 40, and that gives you a great opportunity to get into range for a field goal. If they kick that to the 1-yard line instead, and he brings it out to the 25, we're probably still watching the game right now, and it's in overtime. So, and I would not have fancied Seattle in overtime, frankly. There was all the momentum was with Arizona. So that was a huge moment as well. And look, here's the other big positive, because this is worth mentioning, because people may well linger on the kick that Myers missed. That was not an easy kick in that situation. You have missed a kick to win the game. There's a lot of pressure. If he misses that kick there, I don't see the Seahawks winning in overtime at all. So he's his chance, go and win the game, and he nailed it. And it was 51 yards. It wasn't 31. So I think you have to give Myers a lot of credit there. So that was the positive that I didn't mention in my opening gambit. Super chats coming in. I really appreciate those, by the way. I'm going to come to them very, very shortly. I think you do have to spend a period of time talking about what went wrong in that game. So, Reek Woolen, he had a problematic game against the Niners at the end of the game, which possibly cost them a chance to win, and then bounced back from that for a couple of weeks. Tonight, he was back to the Niners kind of performance. It was penalties, it just felt avoidable. Little things like get your head around. You are one of the fastest cornerbacks in the NFL. You don't have to pull a guy's arm. You've got recovery speed. There was one horrible pass interference play downfield, big chunk play where just trust your speed, man. You are so fast. You don't have to pull the arm back. Costly mistakes. Ken Walker, for the most part, had a good game, but he really needs to just cut out. When if the run is stuffed up the middle, just get your head down. We saw it a few times today when he did sort of run through contact and get a few extra yards. Just run into the middle of that line if the run's not there and get what you can out of it. And if it's a 1 yard loss, it's a 1 yard loss. This desire to turn round almost and go the opposite direction and turn what would have been a 1 yard loss into a 5 yard loss. He's still doing it. Just get your head down, use your power, and try and get as much as you can out of a run if it's not there. The bouncing it outside, it doesn't work enough. So he played well, but it could have been so much better. He should have had a 100-yard game tonight. Devin Witherspoon, he needs to make more plays. And there were two, he had one really good play against Trey McBride on the final Arizona drive where you think that's a great play. Well done. But he got beat for the touchdown against Marvin Harrison. And then on the next drive, he got beat on the third down to Marvin Harrison on a slot fade, which set up the touchdown. When you draft a cornerback 5th overall, you need him to make those. You need him to make the plays. And he doesn't have interceptions. Darian Kendrick has more interceptions this season than Devin Witherspoon has in his Seahawks career. He needs to be able to make those plays. So that, again, was frustrating. I know a lot of people on Twitter. I'm interested to know what you guys think, because I personally, when I saw the Jackson Smith-Njigba hold, which nullified the Zach Charbonnet touchdown, which would have ended the game and possibly would have seen the Seahawks get another touchdown after that, that would have finished the Cardinals off. I kind of thought it was a flag. I understand. I mean, at the very least, I kind of understand how you could interpret that as a penalty. But when I looked on Twitter, everybody was saying it's not a hold. So, I wasn't as annoyed by that one. I mean, I think I understand why someone's I don't agree with that being a flag. And if it hadn't been called, people would have said that's the right call. I understand also. I think it's one of those that could have gone either way. So I'm not as angry about that one. But ultimately, that did prevent the game from being a blowout. And but as with Myers making the kick, having missed one, I think Jackson Smith-Njigba bounced back and made enough plays to warrant that. But the other thing I wanted to mention was they just need to. The Seahawks need to finish these games. This is where a consistent running attack sort of runs out the clock in that final stages in the fourth quarter, and you go home with a win. When it got to 20-6. And you've got a 14-point lead with about 10 minutes to go. The win probability, they put it up on the screen on the broadcast, was 3.6% for Arizona at that stage. That's when you finish the game. If you give up a touchdown, that you've got to run the clock down. You've got to make sure you get a drive going. You've got to get things there. And the run blocking is still inconsistent. They have some good run plays, and they also have a lot of negative run plays. And that's something that is a work in progress. I'm not going to hammer the Seahawks for that. I'm not going to say it's a massive problem. I'm not going to be overly concerned about it, because I think expecting everything to be fixed in 4 games with a very young and quite new offensive line, a new staff, a new quarterback, you've got a couple of new tight ends on the roster now, stuff like that. I'm not going to expect them to get everything done. And the running game is, I think, already looking a lot better than it did a year ago. So I think you have to give them a little bit of credit for that. But this team will not reach its potential until it sees a 14-point lead in the final quarter as an opportunity just to ram the ball down the opponent's throats and do it. That's how they have to do it. Can I defend Clint Kubiak? That's something that, do you know, I'm again, listen, if you see it differently, send me a super chat and let me know what you think. But I thought I did not have a problem with the play calling that much. I think when you call in run plays in the fourth quarter with a lead, that's understandable. You want to bleed the clock. I mean, not everything can be aggressive downfield, but let's just be clear here. When they were sort of in that fourth quarter period, they were not just running the ball. They took a shot to Jackson Smith and Jigba, which led to the big play, which led to the Jason Myers missed kick. So Clint Kubiak was not playing scared in that fourth quarter. I mean, he called that play. It was perfectly executed by the quarterback and the receiver. So I think if we're going to say, well, Clint Kubiak called some run plays that were conservative in the fourth quarter with a lead and they didn't work, well, how much of that is on the play calling? I mean, I would have called a lot of runs in the fourth quarter, and a lot of other people would have done. And how much is that on the execution? I don't think it was conservative with some of those passes. And let's also be fair here. Yeah, you start with the ball on the 40-yard line with 25 seconds to go. The quarterback has to be right. The receivers obviously have, the line has to protect, but the play caller's got to call the right plays. And he called the perfect play that Sam Darnold executed perfectly on that Jackson Smith and Jigba back shoulder throw to get the job done. So I do not think it is fair to, I saw people saying, like, if they lose, it's on Kubiak. No. If they lost that game, it was not on Clint Kubiak for me. That for me was much more on the defense making mistakes, your cornerbacks not making plays, the missed kick. It would have been stuff like that rather than Clint Kubiak. And I'm already saying, like, I've seen in the comments people saying, don't play to lose. How can you say that? I want to dig out the throw that Kubiak called in the fourth quarter before the missed kick. Let me dig it out here on the stats. So the missed field goal, this was the sequence that, this is going to, I'm sorry, this is going to, I think, end the argument that they were too conservative. So they started this drive with 5 minutes and 50 seconds on the clock. The first play was an incomplete pass, not a run, an incomplete pass by Darnold to Elijah Arroyo. The second play was a Ken Walker run for 4 yards. The third play was a deep shot to the right sideline for 36 yards to Jackson Smith and Jigba. How on earth, and that pass was completed with less than 5 minutes in the game with a 1 touchdown lead. How can that be considered conservative play calling? The first 3 plays were 2 passes and a run. There's nothing conservative about that. The kicker missed the kick. Once you got into the range, now, yeah, after the play, you've got a run, and a missed field goal. You do not know how much of that was the head coach going, I'll take a field goal here, just get us into range. That can happen. And I am not going to criticize Clint Kubiak. People say, look at the red zone. I've seen it's the same guy complaining about the conservative play call and talking about the red zone. They'd have scored in the red zone if it wasn't for the hold by Jackson Smith and Jigba. Whether you want to blame the refs or Jackson Smith and Jigba for that play, they scored a touchdown. So, and there was another red zone play when they did score when Charles Cross kind of threw Charbonnet over the line. I'm pretty sure they took at least 1 pass to Elijah Arroyo in that red zone. So I am not having any argument on conservative play calling there. No, there were lots of other reasons why that became closer than it was, and it was, for me, nothing to do with Clint Kubiak. I think that's very harsh. But they won. Look, they won the game. They get through it. It's 3 wins in a row. It possibly could have been 4 wins to start the season. There is still a lot of room for improvement. I am not convinced that they have a viable option at linebacker, whether that's because Tyrese Knight is still recovering from whatever ailment he had in training camp, or whether he's just taking a step backwards. And Drake Thomas, it kind of is a hit and miss player. I just wonder whether they have to go back into the veteran market there and see if there's a player they can acquire. I don't know. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I still think that they are maybe just lacking something somewhere. Maybe that's an overreaction to the fact it became close in the end. But on the plus side, great from Darnold, great from Jackson Smith-Jigba at the end. Myers made his kick. The defense played well for 3.5 quarters and then nearly chucked the game away. I think there are a lot of positives to take from that game. And I think once we've all had a sleep, and for me, it's 4:39 in the morning, so that's coming hopefully quite quickly for me soon. And once we've all had a sleep, we'll probably be more inclined to look at those positives and forget the fact that it was a 3-point game that should have been a 21-point game. And you go back home, you look forward to a game against the Buccaneers, and you're 3-1, and you've got a win in the NFC West, which was really important. So you move forward for this. So I think that's the way that we will view this ultimately. Right, let's dig into these super chats. I am massively appreciative of these, especially this one. Hawkmanny, $100. I hope that you meant 100, not 10 by accident, because we've had that before. But really appreciate it. If it is 100 or well, I massively appreciate that, Hawkmanny. Thank you. I can't understand why Walker doesn't want to hit the run between the tackles. Granted, not that many today. Yeah, I think part of the problem is that there were some runs where the linemen were getting pushed backwards and Walker was kind of running and sort of running right into the back of the player, the interior lineman, quite quickly. Now, in that situation, you do have two choices. It's either, like I say, get your head down and just sort of drive forwards and get what you can. And there were a few runs where he drove forwards and got an extra yard or two. Or you obviously try and bounce it. And Walker, for some reason, when he tries to bounce it, it's almost like he has to do a U-turn, like you're in a car, reversing out of a car park first. He has to like go backwards first and then sort of plot the new course of direction. Or sometimes he will actually turn away from the line to try and turn round. You know, as athletic as he is, he's like an oil tanker sometimes trying to change direction when he gets sort of stopped at the line. Every defender gets a chance to react to that. They can see it's a run. They're all flying to the ball. And sometimes he pulls off a miracle and stretches it out wide. More often than not, it just gets leveled for a 5-yard loss. Or he bounces outside, manages to regain a couple of extra, but it's still like a 3-yard loss. I'd love to go. I'm not going to do it now while I'm doing this live stream. I think it'd be good to go and chart just how many negative runs he had in this game, because it felt like really good run, really good run. Oh, he's lost 5 yards. Really good run. 1 yard, 2 yards. Really good run. Oh, loss of 7. It felt like that, like all the way through the game. And he's never stopped doing that. Like it's just him. It's who he is. And you know, the one thing about Zach Charbonnet, he does not have the magic that Walker can have, but he is just going to get his head down. And you know, sometimes perhaps when we criticize Charbonnet, oh, he's not got a yard there. He's just run straight into the line. There was nothing there. He didn't make anything happen. Sometimes maybe that's for the best rather than going backwards and losing yardage, which Ken does too often. And I think I saw the running backs coach having a word with him after one of those runs. Maybe you have to live with it. Maybe it's part, you know, it comes with the territory of having a player of his talent that he is. That's just who he is, and he's going to do it. But he'd be such a better player if he could just kick that out of his game. Nick says, should K9 or Reek get a new contract this offseason? I'm a firm no for both at this point in the season. What about you? You can't pay Reek Woolen. I'm sorry. Like he is a player who, you know, even in a contract year, is still making similar mistakes. He is an unbelievable physical talent. There is just such a rare find to have the length and the athleticism and everything that he has. But there are too many games where he is a liability. And you do not want to be paying players like that a fortune. I don't think Mike McDonald trusts him, which is why very early in that game, Josh Jobe was getting starts ahead of or snaps ahead of Reek Woolen. So I don't think they trust him. I don't think they think he's reliable. Giving a player who you have that opinion about a lot of money is not a recipe for success. I think with him, you let him test the market and you see what it is. And there might be a deal you can come to bring him back. If he goes somewhere else and gets big money elsewhere, you get a comp pick. I just think that the way that the Seahawks coaches have done a good job with Kendrick and with Josh Jobe makes me think that you don't need to spend lots of money, that they can probably draft somebody or find somebody and work with them and develop them. And yes, they're not going to be a freaky athlete like Reek Woolen, but they might be a bit more reliable. As for Ken Walker, I think it's hard because, I'm not against drafting running backs early, but I am against giving them big contracts. And I think if you are going to give Walker a big contract, he really needs to have a massive season. Like, it needs to be sort of, you think of Alvin Kamara's best seasons and, Saquon last year, they're the kind of seasons you need if you're going to pay someone a big contract. So I would suggest the way that it's trending is through 4 games, he's playing well, but not amazingly well. I would imagine it's probably going to go the way of, again, you let him test the market and you see what the situation is, and maybe you get him back. Maybe he wants a change of scenery. I don't know. I mean, there's still a lot of football to be played. He could up his game. It's probably too soon to be. I think we can make a judgment call on Reek Woolen right now. I don't think we can on Ken Walker, but I certainly wouldn't be rushing to pay mega money. But then I feel that way about a lot of them. Like, I wouldn't be rushing to pay Devon Witherspoon mega money at the end of this year. I didn't want to pay Charles Cross this year. Charles Cross got too easily beaten on a sack by Josh Sweat again in this game. And, this is the thing. I like Charles Cross as a player. I think he's a good player. I don't think he's a great player. And people wanted to give him an elite contract this offseason. He's still giving up the plays that he's always given up. Like, at what point is he going to, just kick that out of his game? Like, you should not be getting as beaten as easily as he was by Josh Sweat on that sack. Just level the guy. I mean, like, he showed what effort he was playing with today on that run that he allowed to be finished by Charbonnet and Cross. That was a great play by Cross, in fairness. Josh says, good win despite the efforts of Woolen. Time to move on from him. Josh, thank you for your super chat. Cadex Law says, better team won. Not bad for Thursday night football. Let's go. Yeah, I mean, look. Apologies, I'm going to need a drink because I'm effectively talking to myself. I think it was in danger of being a snooze fest for the neutrals because Seattle were just dominating the game. But it ended up being more interesting than anybody was kind of hoping for from a Seahawks perspective. I mean, I did not have the lucky ball out until the very end of that game. And I felt like it needs must at that point. And I went and got it. And thankfully, it did the job. But it was just so frustrating. And it's all the more frustrating because it was going to be another game like last weekend where you can kind of sit back and relax and enjoy and bask and think about the next game and think about what you're going to do this weekend and think about how many hours of golf you're going to watch this weekend with the Ryder Cup on. And instead, you sort of I was pacing across the room and sort of cursing every first down. That incredible Wilson catch where he kind of caught it with his forearm or something and managed to control it, and you're thinking that's on 4th down, that would have been the game. Somehow you're just thinking, is this really happening? And then when they scored, I mean, I was really worried they were going to go for 2, and then that would be the decisive moment. They went for 1, and then the kick, and all of a sudden when the Seahawks get put on the 40-yard line, you're thinking, well, they've got a chance. They've got a chance to finish it here. And again, I've said it about 5 times already. Credit to Sam Darnold, credit to Jack Smith-Njigba, credit to the pass pro, credit to Jason Myers for finishing off and getting the kick. Mark says, where do you feel we stand in the NFC West? Is this a team that will beat the Rams and the 49ers? Well, I came into the season thinking the Seahawks were the best team in the West. I think it's to be determined who the best team is in the West. I would guess at the minute you probably have to say the Rams, but then they chucked the Seahawks nearly chucked that away. The Rams did chuck the game away against the Eagles at the weekend, and they made plenty of mistakes at the end of that game too. That was a very similar game for the Rams. They were well ahead in that game against the Eagles, and then pissed it away. And the Seahawks did the same thing tonight, but still won. So, it'd be very easy to go, oh, yeah, they were playing the defending champs. They're playing the Eagles. The Eagles haven't had a great start to the season and looked a bit muddled until Jalen Hurts started throwing it to A.J. Brown. So I'm not sure there's a massive difference between those 2 wins or the win for the Seattle and the loss for the Rams. They do have some good players. The Niners would have been the de facto, they're the best because they're 3-0 and they've beaten the Seahawks. But, when they lose Nick Bosa and the quarterback's banged up and George Kittle's still out and Ayuk doesn't sound like he might not be back at all this season. I don't know. Do you trust the Niners to keep winning? Haven't they got the Jaguars this weekend, who are not a great team, but they're not a bad team. And then they've got to play the Rams next Thursday night, I think. So, I think it's to be determined, where the Seahawks are in the West. I do think the Seahawks have got some good players. I just think that they kind of got to iron out the creases, really. They've got to sort of become a smoother operation. They've got to get that running game going. They've got to cut out the mistakes. They've got to stop dropping interceptions as well. That's been a thing in the last. I know they've got some interceptions. What was it? 2 today, 2 against the Steelers. I can't remember. They have a couple last game as well, or at least one, because Kendrick had one. So they're taking the ball away, but they could have had even more. They could have had even more. So they've got to do that. So I think it's to be determined where the Seahawks are, but I think they're in the mix. They're definitely in the mix. Chris says, Sam is the glue that is keeping these young guys together, in my opinion. He's steely cool. Yeah, Chris, I think he had a great game. Fantastic game. And deserves to get probably most of the attention from this. This is the thing. Like, I understand that people are going to want to talk about Reek Woolen, Devin Witherspoon, and stuff like that. And I for some reason, people want to talk about the play caller. For me, the main topic, after we've all got over the frustration of how that game was closer than it needed to be, the story is Sam Darnold. The story is Sam Darnold and the way that he played tonight. Against a good defense. The Cardinals played good defense tonight. Kyle says, Rob, do you think Darian Kendrick needs to take some snaps away from Reek, with Spoon, Job, and DK being the 3 cornerbacks on the field? Well, it's hard to say, because Kendrick has played very well. I had an undrafted free agent grade on him coming out. He ran very poorly at the combine. Was it the combine? Was it his pro day? He ran very poorly either way. Didn't really work out as planned from at Clemson or Georgia. Didn't work out for him with the Rams. And then he has 2 great games for the Seahawks. Now, is that because he is actually suddenly the light switched on, or the Seahawks coaching has just unearthed something in him? Or is it just that he had a couple of good games? I don't know. So if you'd have said he's going to play more snaps instead of Reek Woolen this week, or if they were even to trade Reek Woolen away or whatever, I would not shed any tears. But I don't know. I wouldn't assume that Kendrick could be a lot better, but Woolen just has to. I mean, is he ever going to take a step and just switch on and do the basics right? That's what people ask. That's what I ask. Just do the basics right. Just turn your head around. Don't pull the guys on when you can run a 4-2, whatever. Just recovery speed, man. Save the Geese says, Cardinals suck. Shouldn't have been as close as it was. They did suck for a large part of that game. They couldn't do anything on offense. Kyler Murray kept getting booed. But yeah, the defense played well for the Cardinals by and large, and the offense found. I mean, they found a way to attack the blitz. They were finding some hot. They were getting some good matchups that they liked. Marvin Harrison Jr. suddenly remembered how to play football. I do think you have to give them a little bit of credit for the way they came back in that. But yeah, for 3 quarters, they were terrible. Ben says, playing for a 50-yard field goal with 6 minutes to go when a first down wins the game is inexcusable. I just don't agree, Ben. And here's the thing. Again, Clint Kubiak is probably not the one going, Coach, I think we should play for a field goal here. I suspect the head coach is making that call. He's the one who is probably at that moment saying, come on, right, okay, let's bleed the clock. When you have 3 downs in field goal territory, the aim is not with 3 runs to play for a field goal. It is in that situation to continue to get first downs, to bleed the clock. And that is football 101. That is an understandable thing. This idea that here's what would have happened if after that big Jackson Smith-Njigba throw that was converted and they're in field goal range, here's what would have happened if they threw it incomplete, and then Sam Darnold got sacked. People would have been complaining and saying, what was that all about? Too aggressive. Or if it have run once, thrown it and taken a sack and then got knocked out of field goal range, people would have said, why are you doing that? Run the ball. See, like it's very easy to criticize something after it's happened and it hasn't worked out for you. Now, in that situation, they threw the ball downfield, 36-yard pass completion to Jackson Smith-Njigba to get into field goal range. That is aggressive. That was not run it 3 times on your own 30-yard line and punt the ball away and play defense. That's conservative. This was going to attack. Threw it twice and 3 downs in that, and the start of that drive with 5 minutes to go to get themselves into position to score. Once they got into position to score, they tried to bleed the clock. with the run, whilst also getting a first down. I have no problem with that. And again, one, a pass, it's not automatic that it's going to be completed. Could stop the clock. And you're kicking anyway. You can get a sack. There was, I was trying to think of the play when they got knocked out of field goal range. That was Ken Walker's stupid penalty, wasn't it, in the first half? You could get knocked out of field goal range there with a sack. Maybe a sack fumble. Like, you're just putting the ball in harm's way. So I do not have a problem when you were in field goal range. If Myers kicks that, the game's over. So I don't have a problem with it personally. Hawks fan Matt, sometimes it does feel a little bit like we have to call the perfect game here to avoid any kind of criticism. Hawks fan Matt Mann says, I counted 5 mispronunciations of Seahawks players by Michaels and Herb Street. Can't get no respect. Yes, it was quite interesting. Who was there? There was Nawusu. That was mentioned several times. There was Derike Young. I liked that one. I guess he's turned like he's like mixing DK Metcalf with Derek Young. I can't remember any of the others. If anybody knows it, can remember any of the others, let me know. But definitely Nawusu was like a consistent thing all the way through it, and Derike was quite funny as well. Kyle, another one. Thank you, Kyle. I think Clint gets too cute sometimes and tries to overthink things, especially on 3rd and 4th and 1. Just get under the center and powering up the guts, or do the tush push, no shotgun ever. Yeah, that is the one thing that I think is worthy of criticism. They had that on the first Seahawks drive when they had the 4th and 1 at midfield, and why they were running from the shotgun, I don't know. And like Gray Zabel got blown up. That bounced it outside. They contained the edge very well, the Cardinals. It was never going to work. But when you have got a tush push with a tight end in Barner, who has been pretty much automatic in that situation, and even if you don't want to use him, just have Darnold run up and sneak the thing. Like, why not just do that? Like, it felt like it was that did feel a bit cute and tricky to me. But yeah, again, you don't know how much the head coach has a say in that. Like, if you're going to do the tush push with the tight end, is that something that Kubiak calls, or is that something the head coach gives the green light to? I don't know. Josh says Cardinals flea flicker attempt was my highlight. That was a cracking play in how hopeless it was, and that definitely was a highlight. Josh, thank you for that. It was a funny moment. Lawrence says McDonald has said he wants to be run first. What would it take to have him convinced we are better as a pass first team? Well, I think you have to. I think you have to be balanced. Like the fact that they're passing it better at the moment is fine, but I think if you just lean into that, you ain't going to become the kind of team you want to be. And you have to sort of persevere with the run. You are going to need a running game. You are going to need the running game to be better. I think abandoning it is the worst thing you can do. Let's not forget, they've changed scheme. They have a new coordinator, new coaches. They've got a rookie left guard. They've got a center who's starting for the first time. Abe Luke has just come back from injury. And they are young. All 5 starters are young. So I think we have to give them some time. And I think they have to persevere with it. And, not running particularly well, but having it as part of your game. I mean, I still had 100 yards today, didn't they? I know that was sort of punctuated somewhat by the Sam Darnold run for 24 yards. Well, look, they had 155 yards, 4.4 yards a carry tonight. So the run game wasn't that bad. And, yeah, I mean, they had 155 rushing yards and 229 passing yards. I mean, that's just nicely balanced for me. So I don't agree. I don't think that we have to come a pass first team. Michael says Sam looks like prime Hasselbeck, Alex Smith, and I mean that as a high compliment. His potential is higher than theirs. Just keep building around him. I think the difference, and I'm obviously a huge Matt Hasselbeck fan and was a big Alex Smith fan. I think the difference between Darnold is he does just have that bit of modern day quarterback magic, the sort of the throw that they always do at the pro day now, where you kind of like run in one way and you throw it back across your body and they whip it 40, 50 yards downfield and everyone goes, oh, what a play. And someone like Peter Schrager on ESPN says it's amazing. That's the kind of thing that Darnold is doing when he gets his body into some awkward positions, still just whips it out there and flick of the wrist. We saw that with the Arroyo pass into the red zone where he was the pass interference against Buda Baker. that just just ability to whip that. He's got incredible. That's why he went third overall, and why he was considered a prospect who could go on first overall, like Alex Smith did, because of that kind of ability. And in fairness, Hasselbeck and Smith had a lot of qualities. I don't think they quite had that sort of major sort of athletic upside that Darnold has got. So he played very well. Lucas says, thanks for always going live. Oh, I should put it up on the screen. Lucas says, thanks for going live, Robert, even after night games. Greetings from Germany. Love Germany, Lucas. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, it's now 4:59 in the morning here. So if you have any more super chats, send them in, because I don't know how much longer I'm going to do. But if you have a question, if you want to say something, if you have completely disagreed with me on anything, then that is fine. Send it in. Are people honestly talking? I've only just sort of looked at the live chat. Are people now bringing up the whole Jalen Carter thing again versus Witherspoon? Because, I really, it seems they are. I'll just touch on it briefly. The Seahawks were never taking Jalen Carter. People who visited Seahawks draft blog throughout that draft process will know how much we talked about that. I mean, I went on VSiN. It felt like nearly every week, because they couldn't believe that someone was suggesting the Seahawks weren't going to take Jalen Carter, because he was by far the betting favorite to go 5th overall. And I think they kept having us on because it was almost like considered a massively hot take. And it was interesting for them. But the information that I had, not about the Seahawks, but about Jalen Carter from an excellent couple of sources, there was no way they were ever going to take him. Like, the character side of things was just not going to work for Seattle. And you kind of know what some of those things are. Like, Todd McShay reported what he reported right at the end of the college football season. You then had all the stuff with the car accident, which people have forgotten about, which I don't think is right at all. And then there was a whole bunch of other things that teams are aware of. And that's why the best overall player in that draft lasted to, 9th or 10th overall? And why the Eagles, who were the team who took him, even on the day, were debating whether they should do it or not. Even they were having second thoughts. And it wasn't just the Seahawks who passed him. Like, the Lions passed on him, and the Raiders passed on him, and other teams passed on him that weren't drafting quarterbacks. So it really is just something that we should move on from. And he's undoubtedly a very good player, a talented player, but he's also a player who is, I've called him a highlight player the other day. Like, he's a highlights reel player who can have splashy moments, and then there's a lot of duff tape as well. And I don't think he's ever going to sort of live up to, like, his upside is crazy good Hall of Fame level. I don't think he's ever going to reach that level. I think he's going to be an impact player in some games and do knob all in other games. And they just weren't going to bring him in. And his practice habits and stuff like that at Georgia, it was never going to happen. So all the best to him in Philadelphia. I'm sure he has no regrets over what's happened. He's a Super Bowl champion. He still went very early in the draft. I'm guessing he's going to get a contract in the future with the Eagles. So bully for him, but let's not second guess that. And look, Witherspoon, with all that said, Witherspoon has to play better. He has to play better. He needs to make more plays. He needs to not look, sometimes as a corner, you're going to get beat. Like, Richard Sherman wasn't like flawless. Sometimes you get beat. If Marvin Harrison beats him on the touchdown, his coverage was still good. He was right there in position. He didn't make the play. Okay, move on. He then made the Trey McBride pass breakup. Good play. But then he got beat by Harrison again on the third down slot fade. Can you make 2 of those plays instead of 1 of those plays as a 5th overall pick? That's kind of what I'm hoping for. Can you make a few more interceptions? Can you impact games more? Like, I didn't agree with him being named as one of the 50 best Seahawks players ever. I thought that was massively premature and recency bias that was slightly embarrassing that he was named on that list. When they're talking about him on I think at one point Al Michaels said he's the best player on Seattle's defense. He is not. That's clearly Leonard Williams. I don't even think he's the second best player, or maybe even the third best player on the defense. I think Julian Love's a better player. I think you could make an argument that Ernest Jones is a better player. I think Byron Murphy and even Jaron Reed are showing that they're very, very useful players. I think Kobe Bryant's playing better than Devin Witherspoon at the moment. So I don't think I think sort of maybe we need to just be a bit more realistic in how we talk about him in order for him to take that next step. But the draft pick in the first round who really has worked out is Jackson Smith-Njigba, and he continues to just be a shining light at receiver. Brian says, what are the Hawks' top draft needs? You'd like to see them target day 1 and day 2. Again, still very early. I think right now you'd have to be looking at, who are the linebackers who are going to be in the draft? Is there anybody out there that, you really like? Because I just do wonder whether an upgrade there is a good option. Receivers, I think adding another receiver, Cooper Kupp's not going to last forever, is he? Is not a bad idea. I think you still look at linemen on both sides of the ball. If you can go and get a really good guard to potentially compete with and or replace Anthony Bradford, I think that should be considered. Let's see how Jalen Sundle plays at center. Defensive lineman, if there's an edge, maybe even another defensive tackle because Jaron Reed's not going to last forever. I think you have to consider that. So, and cornerback, I think cornerback's one of those positions where you can never have enough of them. So we know that they've looked at cornerbacks in the last couple of years potentially as high draft picks. So that could be a position. So there's a lot of positions there. There's a lot of positions. It's not looking like a good draft class. If people go and read my piece on Wednesday, they'll understand why I think that. It's not an exciting draft class so far. But they will be well placed, whatever happens this season, to probably go best player available. This one from, is it GG or JG? Thursday in Arizona, I'll take a win any day or any way. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, a win's a win. And I kind of hate that phrase and buy into it 100% at the same time. Like sometimes when the Carroll Seahawks beat the Titans at the end of his final year, or the Cardinals and the final game that he was in charge, and people were going to win's a win. It was like, well, yeah, but they were kind of crap, and it's kind of still frustrating that this might carry on. Like this does feel like a situation where you can go, look, they were a better team for 3 quarters. They nearly threw it away at the end, but F it, like they still won. So a win's a win. Bring on the Bucks. Here's the thing, again, in a week's time, no one's going to be worrying about what happened at the end of that game. People are just going to be looking forward to the Tampa Bay game as a 3-1 team. When all the other games are played on Sunday and the Seahawks have a better record than most of the teams in the league at 3-1, no one's going to be worrying about how that game finished at the end. We're just going to be focused on the positives, and the quarterback looked good. So that's the main thing. Kerry, thank you, Kerry. No message, but a very handsome super chat there. Really appreciate that. Thank you very much. So there we go. This one, I'm going to put this one just for the fun. Charlie says, Rob, are you coming back to Seattle for a World Series game, a double header with an NFL game? Charlie, I would love nothing more. And I have to say that I am wearing my Mariners hat again tonight. And I'm kind of I don't know if people have noticed, I've kept the Mariners hats on most of this week. I was not a big baseball fan because the games that I went to watch baseball, when I went to Toronto when I was 19, I saw 2 games there, and they lasted forever, and I didn't find them very entertaining. And then I went to the Mariners when I was 21, and they lost 10-0 again, funnily enough, to the Blue Jays. And again, that game lasted that all afternoon. Like it was hours and hours and hours. And it was 10-0 very early in the game. So it was not an entertaining watch. So I've never really been able to buy into baseball. But then when I went to the Mariners 3 weeks ago, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Obviously, there's a stop clock now for the pitching, and I kind of caught the bug a little bit. So I've been keeping an eye. I have the Mariners box score on in the background, and I see they're in the 9th inning now with a chance to get another win and get to 90 wins. So I have been sort of tracking all that. I sort of really enjoyed watching that. I watched the highlights from yesterday's game as soon as I woke up. See Cal Riley's 60th homer. So I am looking forward to it. I've got friends who are big baseball fans, so I am going to be tracking the progress of the Mariners. Will I get back over to Seattle this year? I think it's probably best that I don't, given my record at Lumen Field. In fact, because my record at Lumen Field is so bad, here's a little deal I'll do with the Seahawks. I promise not to come back to Seattle next year if you get to 10-1. Like if you can go on and win another 7 games in a row now and get to 10-1, I promise I will not come to Seattle next year. I'll go to a road game or I'll just not bother. I promise I will stay away and not be a jinx if you can promise me you get to 10-1. If you don't get to 10-1, I promise nothing. I may come back. So, there's the offer that I present to the Seahawks as a franchise. There we go. I don't think there's anything else. And we have done a 45-minute live reaction. So unless there is a late super chat, I'll just kind of run through what we've got coming up. So I have a busy work day on Saturday, but I will be watching all of the college football going into Sunday. It's my son's birthday Monday, so I'm not sure how active I will be on that day. We probably will still have the stream with Jeff if he's around on Monday. But then Tuesday, can I just remind everybody that Bump and Stacy on Seattle Sports, I have a new weekly spot with them at noon. And so tune in for that. And if you don't tune in for it, I will put the video on Seahawks Chat Blog. And by the way, if you can watch all of those videos, whether it's Bump and Stacy, Puck Sports, I know I'm asking so much of you guys to watch all of these different things as well as the videos that I do, but it just helps if you could watch those and leave a comment and a like. It just massively helps. So Bump and Stacy noon on Tuesday, Seahawks Collective 5 p.m. on Tuesday. Really enjoying doing that. So tune in for that. We'll have our reactions to all of this and looking ahead to Tampa Bay. Wednesday, Puck Sports. Again, I will put the video on SeahawksChatBlog.com, so go and check that out. And like I said, probably video with Jeff as usual on Monday as well. So that's what we've got coming up. I will do my draft notes piece. I might do that a bit earlier next week, given I've not got a game to reflect on Sunday. So if I can get that piece out Sunday, Monday, Tuesday or something, I will do that. But we'll see how it goes. Anyway, Seahawks 3-1. And I'm going to take the advice of this comment and I'm going to go to bed because it's 5:10 in the morning. I am going to write something first, though, for SeahawksShopBlog.com. So check that out, SeahawksShopBlog.com on there for that. Please like this video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the video so you never miss any of these. Live numbers amazing. Appreciate you all. Massively appreciate all of the super chats. One last quick request. I know I'm asking a lot of you guys. If you have the YouTube app, you can, after the stream's finished, you can go to the bottom of the video and there is a hype button. You'll find it if you scroll across. If you press the hype button, it will promote the video and it would be doing me a power of good if you were to do that. We've had one final super chat from Austin who says, Reek and Devon are frauds. Not good enough. 14 in the fourth quarter. Yeah, it's disappointing, but like I said, the Rams did the same thing against the Eagles and lost. So, it's tough. It's a bad game for those two players in the fourth quarter. On to next week. Come on. We've got what we've got at this point. So we ain't changing cornerbacks around that much. Maybe Josh Jobe starts a bit more, Kendrick, whatever, but they're going to be part of this team. Anyway, congrats to the Mariners who look as if they're going to win and get to 90 wins. Congrats to the Seahawks. Another good day for Seattle sports. Enjoy the rest of your week. Until next time, bye for now.